Hello and welcome again to the Quiet Light Podcast. I'm Pat Yates. I have a great conversation today. I've had a lot of opportunity to hang around with this lady. She is so sweet. Amy Weiss. She is a great entrepreneur. You'll see her around all kinds of shows. She owns a company called Amazing at Home. She actually is one, along with Tim Jordan, that helped build trade shows going to China, to Mexico, to Jordan. She does a lot to help entrepreneurs be able to source their products and build their businesses. I just think every time I talk to Amy, I seem to get some great information from her. So if you're thinking about manufacturing a product, or if you are manufacturing a product, maybe you want to hedge your bets on the one you have, look at another country. This is a podcast you're going to want to listen to, and you're going to want to look up Amy Weiss. I'm excited to talk to her, so let's get right to it. Amy, welcome to the Quiet Light Podcast. It's awesome to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Pat. It's great to be here.
It is exciting to talk to you because I know that a lot of people at Quiet Light know you. We've seen you around so many shows, so many things, and I ran into you at Prosper and thought, man, we just need to get on and chat it up because you've got so many amazing things going on. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about yourself, your background, a little bit about Amazing at Home e-commerce consulting. Maybe give the people an overview of you and where you're from, your background.
Yeah, so I didn't plan to be doing any of this. That's for sure. I don't think any of us do plan, any part of our entrepreneurial journey until we're actually on it and we're like, oh, wow, okay.
Right.
So for me, I grew up in Wisconsin. My whole family, pretty much my whole family still lives there. And I, moved away at a young age and I joined the military. I actually worked in retail for a little while. I worked at Target, worked my way up from cashier to executive at a Target store in Seaside, California. And I've worked at McDonald's, I've worked in restaurants, I've done all that kind of stuff. And I was working in it as an accountant for a home healthcare agency. And I was trying to go to school full time. And this was when I was like 19 years old. And wow, I found it to be so hard, to go to school full time and also to work full time. And school didn't really understand, or work didn't really understand that, if the books were due at the end of the month, they didn't understand if I needed to be in class, So I ended up joining the Air Force. And it was the best thing that I could have done. I spent 18 years in the Air Force. I worked on ground radar, so it's like air traffic control, but helping aircraft when they're actually flying. Air traffic control helps aircraft when they're taking off and landing. My job helped them during wartime and when they're on their missions. Flying the friendly and not so friendly skies around the world. So that was my first job. And then I was a war planner later. So that my job was to take big visions and turn them into executable plans, which carries over into my businesses now. And then later on, I did cybersecurity for the Air Force, helped the Air Force stand up some of their cyber protection teams. And I retired, left that in 2018 to be a full-time entrepreneur. And here we are today.
So that's amazing. So you're in the military, which, by the way, thank you for your service. It's always amazing. And it's one of those things that I think when you get that realization, you're used to such structure. And sometimes entrepreneurs have to think so differently. To me, that's an interesting transition right there. So how did you decide I'm just going to be an entrepreneur? You didn't want to work for someone, or was it something that you learned in the military maybe?
No, actually, it's really funny that you asked that. I didn't plan this at all. I invented a product. I invented a litter box cleaner for cats. And I'm actually selling that business now. Quiet Light is helping me to sell that business. But I invented this litter box cleaner for cats because I had cats and I wanted to solve my own problem that I was having. And Pat, it never occurred to me that I would have to quit my job. I just was like, oh, well, I'll just kind of sell this thing on the side and, whatever. And during the process of inventing this product, I was very frustrated because I'm a very educated woman. I went to college while I was in the military, and I have 5 college degrees and 2 master's degrees, and I've been through so much military training as well. And I found it so hard to develop a product from scratch. And I found
Right.
that there were so many people that kind of wanted just to take your money and not really help you. And
Right.
that really upset me. And I kind of made it my mission. I was like, okay, I'm going to figure this out. This can't be that hard. I'm going to figure this out. And I want to really share with others along the way. I was an instructor in the military. So for me, breaking down processes into easy to understand steps is something that comes very naturally to me. So I felt it natural to share with others. And that's how Amazing at Home was born, because I started just sharing videos, like telling people, hey guys, I built this 3D printer today. I called this manufacturer. I learned this, I was just sharing whatever I could share about this. And before I knew it, people started asking to consult with me. And I kept saying no. And finally I said yes. And I was still working full time at my job. And those people that I was consulting with, they had incredible success. And then word spread. I never ran an ad or anything for my services. And before I knew it, I was coming home from work, my day job. I was working on launching my product, and I was coming home from my day job every day. And I would have coaching calls at like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night. And then I'd get up and I'd do it all over again. And I'd have stuff going on the weekends. And finally, one of my mentors, I met him at church. His name's Efton. He's a life coach. And he told me, he's like, Amy, you have to quit your job. And I was like, what do you mean? You don't understand. I pay the
Right.
mortgage. I can't just quit my job, and he was like, no, you told me you're turning people down. Like, you have to quit your job. And I was like, no, you don't understand. So anyway, Pat, I had no idea. I was so wrapped up in my career and growing, I had a 6-figure career. It was very scary for me to think about leaving my job and going out on my own.
That's kind of amazing, because I think every single person that comes in and tries to build any kind of a business always has to come from a background where they probably learned something that's a takeaway that they're going to be able to go ahead and just pancake into their business philosophy. So, was there one thing that you were in the military, other than being obviously super organized, which really helps you as a coach? So I can see that trait already, because you balance so much with these shows. But is there one thing you took away that made you think, I'm going to be great, successful as an entrepreneur? Just one trait?
You know, something about working for the government, Pat, that is, and maybe working for corporations, big corporations, sometimes it's like this as well, I would imagine. But something that's very frustrating is that, your unit will have a budget, and your leadership will ask you to put together like a proposal for you to go on a certain mission, or for the funds to be spent in a certain way.
Yeah.
And in cybersecurity, there were a lot of things that could be solved. There were a lot of missions that I knew that we could do that would make a significant impact. And so I would spend so much time putting these large proposals together of how we could do this with a tiny team, minimal resources, and we could make a massive impact. And I
Yeah.
would go all the way up to my chain, and my chain would say, sorry, Amy, we already gave that funding to someone else.
Wow.
And I had this drive, and I think that, and I put up with this for a long time working for the military, because that just happens over and over and over again. And I understand, governments, corporations, they have budgets, they have things that they need to be able to do, and they can't always see your vision, and you need to
Right.
be mature enough to be able to also kind of be a team player, right? But that always frustrated me. And I think that it just goes to show that even when I was part-time consulting and copywriting, so I was also copywriting on Fiverr, and I made $100,000 in 6 months on Fiverr just copywriting,
Wow.
just part-time. And it's because I'm so organized, because I'm, And because I had drive, I was like, okay, I know this offer, I know how to present it, I know exactly the formula that it takes to repeat this process over and over and over again and get excellent results. I was already leading teams, I was leading major operations. Like, so for me, transferring that skill into business and being able to like, yep, I know exactly what I want to do. I'm going to propose it. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to do it with minimal resources. I'm going to have massive impact. I just carried that over into my business. And I
Wow.
couldn't believe that it actually worked. Like I couldn't believe I was actually making all this money and doing all these things and having such massive impact because I was able to do it now. I had permission and I only had to give myself permission. And that was so empowering and
Yeah.
incredible. And it made me never want to go back to working for
Yeah, it's kind
anybody
of
else
funny.
ever
I
again.
was, even though I've been an entrepreneur, I've also been a coach and I was an athlete in college. And sometimes you say it's not what you do, it's how you do it. A lot of times in sports. And I think with you, it really embodies that. It's like you can be the best at a process because you're organized. You're going to learn from what your mistakes were. You're going to get better the next time you do it. I think people that have that ability are amazing. So I can see why that's so successful. So one thing I definitely want to step into though, I want to talk a lot about your sourcing trips. And this is stuff that's really amazing. And if you're an entrepreneur out here, you need to really listen to this part because if you're thinking about manufacturing in any country, especially if it's Mexico, which is a departure for some people, as we talked about, this is someone you need to know because they do shows all around the world to talk, not only educate you on how to run your business, to source products and actually meet manufacturers. So, Amy, I know that's a broad introduction to a really, really smaller topic, but why don't you tell everyone about these shows that you do and where they are?
Yeah. So, Pat, when I first became a full-time entrepreneur, I took my first trip and I brought people with me. I took my first trip to China. And I had already launched a few products for my private label and I was sourcing from China already. And, I was doing the Alibaba thing, find a factory, whatever, trading company, and just try to get a good price. And I went to China and I took people with me, and it made a profound impact. Not only did I save a ton of money on my products that I was already sourcing, I got lower prices, I found more manufacturers, more options, but it opened up a world of understanding a network that I didn't have before, and an amount of innovative products that I would have never seen if I would have just stayed in my kind of narrow mindset of like looking at software, looking for opportunities of what was already on the market, and then sourcing it on Alibaba. You go somewhere like the Canton Fair in China, which is the largest sourcing exposition in the world. There are over 80,000 suppliers in a space the size of 4 large airports. It's insane. And the amount, I mean, imagine if you are a manufacturer presenting at one of these shows, you've got 80,000 competitors.
Yeah.
So you're bringing your most innovative stuff, and just walking through this show, the amount of ideas you get, the innovation, you talk to suppliers that are, they started in this category, now they're doing this, they have just so much experience, and building those relationships is just incredible. So that's where it all started. This spark for wanting to help people source started in me going to China. Not only that, I paid $42,000 for my injection molds that make my
Wow.
product, and I used an intermediary in the US, and they went to China. So when I went to China myself, I found that I could have gotten those same molds for less than half of that price.
Yeah.
So it's a huge, you don't know what you don't know. And
Right.
so any of these countries that you go to source from. So we started in China, and then during the pandemic, when people wanted to get out of China and they, wanted to kind of source closer to home, myself and my partner, Tim Jordan, we started a company in Mexico, basically, we have a trade show there, the only multi-category trade show in Latin America, because there is no Canton Fair in Latin America. There's no Canton Fair in any of these countries. There's no multi-category trade show. And for e-commerce entrepreneurs, you need multiple categories. And so we started one. We were totally off our rocker for doing that, but we did it. And it was incredible, the impact that we had. And, Quiet Light came alongside us for that.
Yeah.
That was incredible having you guys. But we also had a sourcing trip. So not only could you come to our trade show, but you could come to our sourcing trip. And we went on factory tours and we kind of just taught you about the culture. Because the number one question that we get is, well, can you just find me a manufacturer for this pencil or whatever, whatever it is in Mexico? And our answer is always, no, we can't, because you need to go to these countries and actually build relationships. It's not China. You can't just call them up, one-stop shopping. There's no Alibaba there. You really do need to build relationships. And in any country that you go to, including China, you need to build relationships. There's a difference when you do that. So we started these sourcing trips. And then when we did that in Mexico, my friend Talal Assad, he is Jordanian and he helped us with Mexico. And he said, Amy, I've always dreamed of doing this in my country. Can you help me do this in my country? And we did. So we started last year, we started one in Jordan. I couldn't believe it. In Jordan, there's a free trade agreement, just like we have in Mexico. So you don't pay tariffs.
Wow.
The Jordanians make nearly everything, right? They make all kinds of different products, plastics, textiles, everything, you name it, just like Mexico. And they're already used to exporting. So the thing about Mexico is, yes, it's close to home, but your manufacturer may not be used to exporting yet. So you might have to do some work there to work together to get used to that exporting. And that is part of our mission there, is to actually educate both sides, right? Educate and help both sides for trade, to increase trade. But in Jordan, they're already exporting. They're in the middle, they're a tiny country in the middle of the Middle East. So they're already exporting. So they've already got that down. So then it's just a matter of finding your manufacturer and working with them there. So we've got Jordan, we have Mexico, and we have China sourcing trips. And this next upcoming China one in October will actually be headed to Thailand as well for a sourcing trip. So always adding on and having a lot of fun there. But if you haven't been on a sourcing trip in your life, you got to go, because it really, really makes a huge difference in, no matter where you source from, in what you do.
I would 100% agree with that. And that's why I'm glad we're talking about this. I think people underestimate how important face-to-face contact could be. Like, if you've even been working with someone for a while in China, you should probably go see them if you've ever done everything virtually. Like you said, you don't know what you don't know, which is weird because Chuck comes on your trips and that's like his favorite saying. But I think that having gone on the Mexico trip, so for listeners out there, I did the Mexico trip. I did the sourcing. We were actually in a plastics manufacturing facility that we got to watch how they had their process. They did a great job. It wasn't the most refined location or anything like that, but then we went to a broom factory that had incredible setup and great automation, everything from start to finish. And I think the more people think through their product, they really should, especially in this day and time, should hedge their bets on where they're manufacturing, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I always tell people it's simple economics, right? I mean, we definitely want to source our product. A lot of people want American made, and I have a product that's made in America, and it's not as easy. It's not as easy as we want it to be, right? And so I do think that wherever you're sourcing from has to make economic sense for your business, but at the same time, there's just so much out there that you don't even realize, and for years I would go to Mexico on vacation, and I love Mexico. I maybe it's because I had moved to San Antonio, Texas from Hawaii, and Mexico was like the closest place that I could go to find a decent beach. So, I always would travel to Mexico, and I couldn't believe I'd go to the retail stores and stuff. And there were so many things, there were common things that were made in Mexico. And I kept asking myself, especially with the sourcing background and having been to China and all this, I was like, where are all these manufacturers? How do I find them? And for years, I wondered about that. So when this opportunity presented itself to actually go and find them and, build a business around this, it was just so incredible to see the amount of innovation that you can find in every single country, and how your business can really take advantage of that if you're familiar with your process, you're familiar with manufacturing, how to build those relationships. The opportunities are incredible.
Yeah, I agree with that. One thing about the show that I meant, or the sourcing trips, and especially that I meant to mention, is a lot of people may be nervous about going places alone. Like if you don't have someone supposed to go with you, you want to go to China, you go to Mexico, you want to go on sourcing stuff, and you really don't know what you're around. So doesn't this even give it more comfort that they're with a lot of entrepreneurs? They network, they talk to people about businesses, do seminars, learn so many things. So I'd love you to talk a little bit about that within the conferences and sourcing shows.
Yeah, that is such a good point. I was so terrified to go to China my first time. It was so unknown to me. And so many people, I close every single person that comes on the trip. I have personal conversations with them. I make sure that, I answer their questions because this is a huge leap. And it's the same for Mexico. Do the same thing, talk to everyone who comes on the trip or considers coming on the trip. And it's really overwhelming to think about, okay, I'm going to go to this foreign country that I know nothing about. Where am I going to stay? How am I going to communicate with the local population?
Right.
How am I going to get around? How do I even get in the country? Are they going to confiscate something from me? You have so many questions. And then you wonder, when I'm there, how will I eat? Like, what will I do? Yeah, is there Uber? Like, what can I do? So we take all of that off of your plate. Like you just fly there. We tell you what airport to fly to, and we're there to pick you up. We have a person with a sign, a private driver that takes you to the hotel. And, and then we get to spend that time together. So what's wonderful about it is we take care of all the meals. We take care of, whatever trade shows we're going to, whether it's ours or someone else's trade show. We take care of all of that registration for you, everything that needs to get done. And all you do is show up and learn. And then we also invite speakers. We do workshops, so that way you have this immersive learning experience. And really the magic happens on these trips in the relationships that you build. Because when you have an experience like this, where you go on a trip to a foreign country with a group of entrepreneurs, you build relationships like you will never build just going to Prosper in the US, like you're familiar with that. You're going to go to the restaurants you want, you're going to do this or that. And you don't have that deep networking. But when you go on a sourcing trip like this with a group of people, you become friends for life. And it's just really incredible to see the partnerships that are built, the innovation that happens. There's like this power of, we called it the trifecta, like the power of three, where people would come back from Canton Fair at the end of the day after seeing all these products, and they'd get to talking with somebody else who was on the trip. And if another person joined before they knew it, they'd have created a whole business or a whole new line. And there's just something about that versus if you just went by yourself and you're just looking all day and you get back and you're just kind of in your own head, you don't have that same experience. And it really is just, it's like a life altering, business altering experience for sure.
That's so great. I mean, that's really, I just was so taken by the trips that we took to Mexico. I've been there twice on your trips, and I thought they were just so amazing. We met so many good entrepreneurs. Quite Light was smart to get involved with this because we made so many great relationships. So I want people to be able to look this up if they want to. You got some shows coming up. So can you tell the people what sites those are where they can go out and view them?
Yeah, for sure. So if you'd like to join us in China, you can go to amazingathome.com/China. And then if you'd like to join us in Mexico, we actually have a Mexico trip coming up in August. And that is going to be themexicotrip.com. If you'd like to check out our trade show in Mexico, it's evolatam.com. So like evolution, EVO, and then Latam, like Latin America. So LATAM.com. So
we'll make sure. Those, yeah. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No.
No, I was going to say, we'll make sure to get those on the site. I thought you were finished. Go ahead and the last one.
yeah, so that was it. So our China trips are amazing. Oh, and if you want to come with us to Jordan, how can I forget about the amazing Jordan? Oh my gosh, the food in Mexico, the food in China, the food in Jordan. I could just eat my way around these countries. They're amazing. But Jordan is at sellandsourceme.com, sellandsourceme.com.
That is great. I know we could sit here and talk entrepreneurship all the time. I think I had such great experience at all the ones that I went. I'll encourage people to look. And if they're trying to think about manufacturing any of those locations, need to understand and meet vendors. Amy's a great person to do that with. Obviously, you can help their businesses on Amazon, things like that. You're just an amazing job, Amy. I appreciate you coming on the Quite Like podcast today.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.